Great. So the topic for this panel is monitors and creators. Whose game is it anyway? Monitors being the investors who put in money and then have to monitor every penny that kind of gets spent by the startup or not. And not is also very important, not getting spent. And the entrepreneurs have their own take. In our panel today, we have a lot of bootstrapped entrepreneurs, a lot of angel-funded or family and friends funded entrepreneurs, and we have one VC-funded entrepreneur, recently VC-funded. So we'll have a variety of perspectives. But what we're going to talk about really is the fact that investors raise money from limited partners. So you have funds, VC funds, which raise capital from limited partners, and they have a responsibility to deploy those funds and get a return on that after meeting their own costs, of course. But there are investors that they are reporting to as well, in a sense, after the life of the fund or during the life of the fund. They have that responsibility towards their investors to monitor where the money goes, how the money is being spent. At the same time, you have, on the other hand, the entrepreneurs who are receiving the money because they have pitched an idea which is powerful, which is scalable, which is at some point of time exitable, and therefore that's what will deliver the returns to the investor. So you have a powerful engine which is kind of taking the money and multiplying it for you. You do want to give it enough fuel. You do want to give it also enough attention, but not too much so that you throttle it to death, right? And I think that's really the mix when we're talking about this session. I'll step down so that you can see everybody behind me. I'll first request every participant to just give a very, very brief introduction so that the audience knows who they're in front of. Starting from, well, let's start with you, Vamsi.
Hi, this is Vamshi, partner at Kalari Capital.
Hi, I'm Bhavna, co-founder of VFounder Circle, and yeah, we are sector and stage agnostic with over 160 investments.
Hi, I'm Nitya. I'm a VP at 314 Capital. We're an early stage fund managing over $500 million in assets under management.
Hi everyone, I'm Ankita from Fireside Ventures. We primarily invest in the iconic brands of tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Ashish, principal at Ivy Cap Ventures. We are early to growth stage fund. We manage about 6,000 crores now. Yeah, super excited to be here.
I'm Zoeb from Sauce VC. We're an early stage fund investing in consumer brands. Some of our investments are Mokobara, XYXX, Innovist, or The Whole Truth. Many more I'd like to name, but I'll pass it on.
Hi, I'm Harman. I'm the founder and managing partner at Prath Ventures. Prath is an early stage investment firm focused on consumer businesses.
Hello, good evening. I'm Udit Toshniwal. I'm the founder at the Pan Project. We're really excited to be growing. We recently got funded and looking forward to growing our omni-channel approach in this coming year. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rahul Agarwal and I'm the founder of Coffeeza. We are a premium coffee brand that specializes in coffee capsules and machines. We are 6.5 years old and completely bootstrapped till now.
Hi, my name is Akshay Mahendru. I run a pet care company. The Pet Point is the retail chain of my company, and we run a D2C brand called Nuti. Nuti is a pet care brand which specializes in pet care products. Our agenda is affordable pet care, so that every pet should have a home and every home should have a pet.
I'm Abdul Samad, founder of Sam & Marshall Eyewear. We started the brand in 2019. It has been a good journey. Started the brand by selling door to door. Now we are doing good, and we're the fastest growing MSME also in the micro sector. Yeah.
Namaskar, मेरा नाम नितिन है. I drive a brand Indie Gifts. So we appeared in Shark Tank last year. Indie Gifts is basically building a gifting brand for the Generation Z. As we say, we are building swag and sanskar together. So that's what we do.
Good evening, everyone. This is Yash Mukhi. I'm founder at a footwear brand called Chups. We make cool, quirky flip-flops for the Indian consumer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Radhika Dang, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Good Karma Company and Wildflower Naturals. We're into wellness-centric beauty products.
Hi everyone, I'm Malvika. I'm the founder of Cereco. We're India's first psychodermatology skincare brand. And we're about 1 year old and completely bootstrapped at the moment.
Hi, I'm Vani. I'm the co-founder of Deechika. We are the only innerwear brand that focuses on under 25 young women in India. We also do reusable period care.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Yash Kotak. I'm one of the founders of Bombay Hemp Company. We're India's foremost industrial hemp and medical cannabis, or what we colloquially refer to as bhang company. We make medicines from the cannabis plant in the realm of pain management and mental well-being. We're a vertically integrated company that manages the whole business from research to retail.
Hi everyone, I'm Puneet Tyagi. I'm Vice President at Igor Shoes. So we're one of the leading leather shoemakers in the country, and we're there at almost 2,000 stores pan-India, and we're completely bootstrapped. And yeah, we're here to make the Make in India thing a big thing, and make you guys forget about foreign brands.
Great. So a fantastic panel. As you can see, I'm going to request one person from the investor side and one person from the entrepreneur side to step forward, if you don't mind, and just give a 2-minute or 3-minute perspective on what you see this investor-investee relationship as. So let's start with the entrepreneurs first. Why don't we start with the entrepreneurs, because that's where it all starts. Anyone, just feel free. Go ahead. 2 minutes. So what do you feel about the relationship between an entrepreneur and an investor, particularly a structured investor or an institutional investor like a VC?
So I think I personally feel taking investment is always a choice, that what is the size of your dream, and whoever can help you to build that size of the dream is a good combination. But finding the right synchronization between the investor and the investees, it requires to set the vision first. If the vision is right, then definitely that can be achieved. I think we remain bootstrapped till we reach almost like 60-70 lakhs per month revenue. At least जब तक business उस level पे नहीं आए कि table के across बैठ के बात कर सके, तब तक उस पे बात करने का कुछ मतलब नहीं लगता है. और Shark Tank become a platform for us where we were able to get some sort of right strategic support and investment. That's where we took that sort of deal. So I think from the investor side, it is also important that what kind of value in addition to what fund they can provide makes more sense to the startups. And at the same time, startups के लिए भी ज़रूरी होना चाहिए कि at what time they really need to take investment from and from whom they want to take investment.
Okay. Before I go on to the VC side, I'm going to request the event team to put up the QR code on screen. This is for the audience. There'll be a QR code on screen which you can scan, which will open up a poll. There are going to be a few questions, just 4 questions, very quick. Just answer those questions as you see fit. Before we go into the session, I would like to capture as many responses as possible. And then we will hear public ki awaaz after we are hearing the ones on the stage. So can somebody from the VC side step up and answer the same question? How do you perceive? Vamsi.
Hi. I think, again, I've been on the founder side and moved to the VC side, so I come with an operational background of seeing both sides of the story. I can tell you my own experience when I started my own company was that I think I got very, very relevant and candid feedback all the times from the board which was with me, right from my early investors like Mumbai Angels to IDG, Kalari, Cisco, Qualcomm, a lot of them. But everyone used to bring a lot of things to the table, right from teaching me some of the things like, how do you manage your cash flows, to working capital cycles, to a lot of things which I would have not even known. And the scale is very different when you talk from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 and 10 to 100, right? So you learn along the way, and the different kind of people who come on the board always bring a different relevant experience because they're really sitting on 10 different boards, understanding 10 different experiences and 10 different use cases you can think. So it's really about, what is the leverage I would take from building a relationship which can help me throughout my journey in learnings. Second, I really felt that if you build a great relationship, because again, the board, the way it is divided is each one brings a certain kind of experience. Some people are there to even be like a personal mentor to you who you can actually bounce off, because there's ups and downs within the whole journey, and you get to actually be able to build a relationship which goes far beyond the board, where you can actually ask them for different kind of helps at different levels. Basically, it gets to that level. So I personally feel, it's not really about whose game it is. I think it's always about the founder's game. I believe that the value is created from the founders, for which, obviously we are a byproduct of creating the same value for our investors. But I feel it's really about, how do you actually leverage the skills of the particular board or the investors who's sitting on your board, and how well do you know them to actually get access to understanding their own insights from different use cases or different companies. You can understand their network in terms of being able to hire the right kind of people, the network to actually reach to the customers you might want to reach, because investors can create doors to reach those customers. So I really feel that it's about what you can leverage and which will actually eventually get into building a great relationship to go forward.
Great.
Just to add on to that, I think very well said and right insight. I think finding the right investor becomes the key. But अभी तक कैसा होता है ना कि पैसे को तो मेजर किया जा सकता है, लेकिन जो वैल्यू है उसको मेजर नहीं किया जा सकता. और उसी तरीके से फ्रॉम द पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ फाउंडर्स एक माइंडसेट होता है कि मुझे मेरे जैसे लोग चाहिए. तो आप वेजिटेरियन, इसका मतलब नहीं कि कोई भूखा शेर आपको नहीं खाएगा.
Well said.
I totally feel in that sense that if you really want to find the right investors, instead of just the money which you are chasing and looking, you should also measure the kind of value you seek. And once you have that value which you are looking forward to drive from that investor group, that makes a better combination and a pair.
Well said. Ankita, can I call upon you to answer this question? But before I do that, has everybody finished voting, polling? Yes? Okay, great. Show of hands, please, on the panel. I'm going to ask you a question, and please give me response to this. Availability of surplus funding, because money is, after all, at the foundation of this relationship between investees and investors. And, it's been said about marriages as well, that money is one of the most important factors you need to kind of keep sorted out with your partner, otherwise it can lead to breaks in marriage. So how do financial control and funding affect the creative freedom of founders? We'll come to that question. Just while you're thinking about that, show of hands, please. Availability of surplus funding is important to unleashing a startup team's creative potential. If you strongly agree or agree somewhat, please raise your hand. Agree. Availability of surplus funding is important to unleashing a startup's creative potential. Please raise your hand high so that we can see. So there's go on, don't be so reluctant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, okay. 6 out of whatever, 18, 19 people, so that's about 30%. Can we have the poll results, the graph on the screen for the first question, please? So the agree is the blue and the red, and that's like a very large number saying surplus funding is important. The audience really disagrees with you guys. So, Ankita, let me ask you this question. How do really financial control and funding affect the creative freedom of founders?
The way I want to answer this question is with an example of a board that I joined last year. And the first discussion of the next 100-day plan we were having, it was when you're a founder, and I can empathize that the opportunities which are there in front of you are immense, and you would want to grow and grab every opportunity out there. But what you may end up doing by being everything for everyone, be nothing for no one. And that's where I think a lot of experience of having seen journeys where things have gone on the wrong side by being too many things at the same time and not being able to manage, because it's not just the capital, it's the bandwidth of the founders. And the way, at least I tell the founders I work very closely with, look at your journey from one fundraise to another till you get to the liquidity standpoint. And whilst you're doing this, build something meaningful, which is meaningful for the next stage. And therefore, choose your battles accordingly. Choose the strategies that you want to focus on accordingly. Choose the bandwidth that you want to spend accordingly. And therefore, I think it becomes very much a symbiotic relationship, if I may call it so, that a focus always helps. And just, after that 100 days plan, now we are 1 year, we have seen that journey for 1 year. There were 5 things that the founders wanted to do. We sat together. I mean, it wasn't an argument, it was more like a discussion to say, maybe let's focus on these 3. And now the founder has come back and said, yes, we find immense value because you told us that which is the path which will get us to building something which is meaningful for the stage that we are building for the next 12 months. So I think it helps a lot. It helps also to not burn too much too fast. It helps you to extend your runway. It helps you to build capabilities which are deeply enrooted so that you become valuable for the next stage investor.
Rahul, you have a alternate view or a supporting view?
I'm going to speak from personal experience. So we have been bootstrapped for the past 6.5 years. And many people watching Shark Tank, my friends, they say to me, yaar, tu Shark Tank pe kyun nahi jata? Why don't you raise funding, grow faster? And we have been, approached by angels, other family offices, etc. I mean, while we have always had those conversations, I think staying bootstrapped has allowed us to sort of really focus on the product and to make mistakes at our cost, right? Without someone else's money, and it has allowed us to perfect and mold our USP, right? What we really intend to stand for. And I'm kind of grateful to that. I'm kind of grateful that it played out the way it did. And I think if ever, whenever we do raise in future, I think it will only add on to, because then now that the product, the creativity has put a strong USP in place, and we can kind of scale that together with any future investor.
So it's you're saying that the surplus fund drives creativity. It's getting the principles, the fundamentals right is important, and then the money helps after that rather than the other way around. Both of you, I think, seem to be saying that. Yeah, please, go ahead.
What I really think is that if you are creating a new category, then you really need VC on the first day, or maybe pre-revenue or whatever. But if you're not creating a category, you're playing along a category, but you have an innovative product, or maybe you have something new, the price point is good, I think you should do the business. You should start the business on your own or with your money or whatever. See how the business is run. Kaise hota hai, every fundamental you should know, and then you can go to the VCs or investors and then ask them. Once you should sort your basics, your base, and then you can double down on it. That's what I feel.
Okay.
I just want to add something to what I said. In some of the early conversations we had, many people were telling us, like we focus on coffee pods, right? And we have kind of really doubled down on that. We have sort of built a very strong brand around it. We've done a lot of R&D, invested in that. So a lot of people would say, "वो brand ये कर रहा है, तुम वो क्यों नहीं करते? तुम वो क्यों नहीं करते?" And somewhere, the gut feel would say, "नहीं यार, this is what we know. This is what we are good at." That I can see it looks like all, it looks fancy on the outside, but I kind of know the reality because I'm in this industry. I've been in this space for the past six and a half years. And, over time, we have seen how things have played out for other brands. And kind of, again, the point that, I've been thankful that, it played out the way it did, like we stuck to doing what we know best.
Great. I think we'll have to move along a little bit faster. So let's move on to the next section. While we do have a couple of other questions within this cash section, let's kind of meld it with the other section. I'm talking about control. So here's a question for you guys. Most startup failures are because of too little investor oversight, or most startup failures occur due to too much investor control. So whoever agrees with the first statement, which is most startup failures are because of too little investor oversight, please raise your hands. Come on, raise your hands, or not. Only one? Okay, so it's basically everybody is seeming to agree that most startup failures occur due to too much investor control? Is that what you're saying?
There's just
It's a binary.
It's a balance.
I'm putting you on a spot. It's a binary.
It's not just about one thing.
No. So sure. Here, let's talk about this particular issue about control, and then we'll come to the audience poll as well.
So if I could take that, right? I think
just hang on a minute. This is just a poll. First the poll. So most of you are saying that most startup failures occur due to too much investor control. Okay. Let's have the audience results up there. Most startup failures occur due to too much investor control. The audience seems to agree. Not as much as you would have expected, but fair enough. So yeah,
we were
go ahead and somebody who's not spoken, if you don't mind. Yeah, go ahead.
It completely would depend on the stage of the startup, right? If you're an early stage startup, I think the founder is closer to the product, the market, and thus, of course, at that stage, the micromanagement wouldn't help. But if you're in a growth stage, then there are a lot of things where investors add a lot of value, especially with regards to risk management, financial control, internal governance, right? And again, how do you find a balance? I don't think that it's a yes or no question. I think it's about finding the balance. And most importantly, I think most startup founders, this happened to us, and giving a personal example is that we identified before we raised the money that we did, what is the objective of bringing on an investor, right? Is it a strategic investor? Then you better take their inputs, right? Because that's why you have them. Or is it just a financial play for them? In our case, for example, the first investor that we had was Mr. Ratan Tata. And it was very important for us that someone lends credibility to the work that we were doing, because working with cannabis, which has its own preconceived notions, and his name literally just added so much value to our entire work. And post that, some of the strategic investors that we got on board really helped us shape how we look at policy development in the country, how we look at R&D and scientific development. So it truly does help. And of course, I think there are internal structures that can be set up in order to simplify the communication. For example, having a strong board which kind of mediates between the founder and the investors is super important. And of course, ultimately open communication which can lead to trust between the investors and the startups is super critical. Constant communication as to how do we solve problems. So I think that's where I come from.
Basically what you guys are kind of leading towards is that let the founders do what they do best with minimal or the required oversight, and no more than that. Don't kind of pull the reins.
I
Yeah, please go
would
ahead.
want to put a different perspective here. I don't think it's a this or that answer. A lot of startups fail because under growth pressure, sometimes you take calls and you don't put that plug at the right time. And that is the story all across. That is where startup failure happens. It could be too much investor control on growth pressure, it could be too little investor control, but it is about stopping or pulling brakes on something at the right time. That is when startups fail. I don't think it's either of those two.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sure, good.
I think so. Any business, any company, there's not a like a template that you can put onto. Founders are in the business for a long run. They want to make a product for a long run. I've hardly met any founders. Don't think anyone on the panel is here for the exit. They want to build great companies. India needs big companies to come in. Having bootstrapped my company for so many years now, I give you a small example. So I'm here for the long run. I want, everybody wants to be the number one, number two of the country. So there is no set template. Founders will make mistakes. I think with the right kind of control, investors, because of their investors, they know they have been in the industry for a very long time. They understand the business. They might control your mistakes. You might be making 100 mistakes. Probably with the right kind of control, your number of mistakes can come down to 60. Or probably a plan which you want to execute, and you run it through your investor, and they said, run it through this way.
So it's not control, it's guidance.
It's guidance. I think I would look at it as a bigger brother. As a business, मुझे लगता है कि मुझे investor नहीं, मुझे एक बड़ा भाई चाहिए. I need
बड़ी
that.
बहन क्यों नहीं चाहिए यहाँ पे? Investors sitting here.
We need somebody like a बड़ा भाई which you can tell you, no, this, don't go by this road. Take this way. It's easier. You might take a little more time. It's easier. This and that. There are a lot of in and outs of business. So I think that's the kind of control every founder here would relish. Kind of, not the control word. I think guidance is a better word.
Radhika, you made a statement earlier before, and I just want to want you to share that here.
So we're bootstrapped, and in the initial days, we pitched our business to a lot of investors. We took part in D2C accelerators. I personally feel the monitor, creator, investor, investee relationship is like, it's more like a marriage. So you've got to be very sure about who you're getting on board. You've got to have a shared vision. It's the guidance, it's the mentorship. They're going to open the doors for you. But at the same time, the two have to be on the same page. For me personally, we're bootstrapped because I wanted to build a brand that's going to survive like 100 years. That's my vision. So it's very important to get the investor at the right time. And I personally feel that because we were so frugal in the beginning, and that just came because we didn't have enough funds, we had to get creative to sustain. And I think that is a mindset and that is a muscle we developed, which is really going to help us go all the way there.
I think that's interesting because I can just reflect upon a conversation I was having about 7-8 years ago with an extremely well-funded company where I was talking about a brand strategy and a kind of brand approach for the next 5 to 7 years to develop. And the response from the other side of the table was, we don't know if we are going to be there the next year. Why are we talking about 5 years? And it's interesting that you say you're looking at 100 years. So that's a very interesting perspective. Harman, a quick question for you. What are the strategies that founders can use to negotiate control terms that align with their vision while addressing investor concerns also?
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's very important, first of all, to just choose the right investor. I think what really matters is that you align your thought process with the investor that you're bringing on board, right? There's a gentleman, Sudhir Jatia, who runs Safari, and he had made a comment recently saying, bringing an investor is like getting into marriage, but you already know that you're going to get divorced after 5-7 years, right? So you need to really align yourself on what the objective is, what the goals are for the next 4-5 years. And also there will come a time where I think because the investor runs a fund which has limited life, they will need to exit. So what are the terms of exit? How do they look at exit? I think those are also some of the discussions you need to have. So I just feel it's like really choosing a partner. I mean, I really don't like the term monitors in the discussion topic. I think we are more of partners, and our job is to be supportive of the founder's vision. Ultimately, it is the founder who's going to ultimately create value for us, right? And for everyone else involved. So it's very important that we buy into his vision And it is also the founder's responsibility to be clear about what he wants to build and, you know, jisko kehte hain thok baja ke check whether the investor also thinks about the business in the way the founder thinks.
Yeah, but Ashish, let me put this question to you. I mean, disagreements will happen.
Of
right?
course.
It's natural. How do you handle, as between founders and investors, how do you handle disagreements over particularly control and oversight? Because you want the founders to run the business, at the same time you do have to have a lagam somewhere. It's your fiduciary responsibility. So you have to do it in a way that fosters a positive working relationship between the two parties. What's your perspective on how do you do that?
No, I think definitely this is a more controversial question because everybody here feels that a startup does not do well because of a lot of pressure by investors, right? Well, I think it's part of the process. I think it's inevitable, right? You know, arguments, fights, you cannot get away with it. The most important thing is to realize that what are you both chasing for, right? I mean, end of the day, if the company does not do well, both of you all will not do well. So it's very important to understand that aspect and understand what is your real goal. And it also stems through understanding individuals personally. I think we keep talking about IQ most of the time. We often fail to address EQ in some of these discussions. And I think founders build startups, because they feel emotionally connected to a particular idea or an objective, right? Which takes time, and that only comes with alignment, I think. And at the same time, let's get over the fact that this or that, or rather monitors or creators, right? It's who is really going to win the game. It's not your game or our game. It's the consumer's game. So let's understand if consumers like you, it's your game, right? So aligning that is very important. And look, we don't believe really in constant pressure or as you said, lagam on the founders. This is more like ensuring that everybody is aligned at the same time and everybody knows what to do. And yeah, I mean, that's more or less how you could probably address it. And after that, also, I can tell you that there will be fights and there will be arguments. You buckle up and move on. I think don't be emotional about it.
Good, have adult conversations.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Nitya, can I ask you this question? If you look at it from the founder's point of view, what should they do to communicate their need for autonomy without kind of ruffling feathers?
Yeah, no, I think, I've
We're
been
talking about adult conversations, so.
Yeah, I think you've clued that in really well. I've been an investor for the last 5.5 years. And one of the things that I truly believe is that, we are wired to go after markets, we're wired to go after products. But at the end of the day, you can have a great market, you can have a great product. We actually invest in people. And I've seen like the full 9 yards of it, I've seen people express themselves very differently. I think it's a two-way communication. It's a two-way street. I think, I would want to kind of do an anecdote here as well, right? So I've seen founders, who look at an investor as a member on their team, as somebody who's, let's say, if not on the steering wheel, at least on the front seat, and really communicate well with respect to and be very honest as to what's going right, what's going wrong, and really invest in building a relationship that lasts the test of time, right? Like you would do with a sibling, a friend, or even a mentor or an advisor for that point. And I've also seen founders, who've been very excited about the proposition of venture, only to realize that, it also comes, with its fiduciary responsibilities, right? And I think it's very important to kind of build that relationship almost symbiotically to kind of realize that, we're the same team. And just communicating, being very honest, and pretty much looking at an investor as your problem solver, as somebody who would hide your problem for. I think that mindset is pretty much an A/B test at this point in time. And I think it's a two-way street to kind of build that relationship where, the investors should have enough trust in the founders to do the right thing, and the founders should have enough trust in the investor to maybe take a problem to them and hope that, they can brainstorm and solve it together as opposed to one versus the other. Because the other thing that I truly believe in, and, that poll was very surprising to me, that investors are not in the business of, honestly controlling a business. That's not what we aim to do. We're in the business of making money, right? And hence, at no point in time does controlling anybody's businesses achieve our outcomes. It's always, being an enabler that kind of ensures that all sides of the table move towards a desired outcome.
Great. So let's move on to the next poll. We seem to have some good kind of interplay between the panel and the audience. So what roles do milestones and performance metrics play in maintaining a balance between creative freedom on the one hand and investor expectations on the other? So what I'm going to ask you actually is to agree or disagree with the following statement, that well-defined milestones are crucial for balancing creative freedom with investor expectations. So do you agree? Please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 100%. Oh, well, yeah, 100%. No, Yashish disagrees. But, okay, all right. Let's have the poll up for the third question. The result. Interesting. So almost a third of the people don't believe in well-defined milestones. Interesting. Okay. Nitin, your perspective?
मतलब फेल फास्ट की भी अगर हम लोग बात करें तो अगर कुछ माइलस्टोन हो, एक बेबी चलेगा तो गिरेगा तो उठ जाएगा, ज़्यादा लंबी जंप लेंगे तो नहीं चलेगा. तो एक वो होता है कि बिल्कुल स्टेप बाय स्टेप चलना और एक बहुत स्पॉन्टेनियस चलना है. तो मुझे लगता है कि अगर बेबी स्टेप्स डिफाइन कर ली जाएं तो बेहतर है. उसमें अगर गिर भी जाएंगे तो वापस उसका कोर्स करेक्शन का पॉसिबिलिटी रहेगा.
Bhavna, what about you? What do you feel?
I mean, well, I'll just actually bounce off all the things that my fellow investors have just said. So investors are like partners, right? So even the milestones that we do set for our founders, they're mutually agreed upon, right? I mean, somewhere the vision sort of, comes together. We and the founder, we agree where we're going. That's why we came on board. If there are fundamental differences, right, as to where does the founder want to take the company and we don't agree, or those things are pretty obvious during the due diligence or in the first few meetings, we may not just go ahead with the investment, right? The reason we do go ahead with the investment is because we sort of agreeing on, the mutual interest of both the parties. And I think a lot of founders also are very aligned and they're very considerate that if the founders, or if the investors coming on board, then yes, they would need to exit at some point, right? And these are the numbers, or this is the path that has to be taken for that. So I think it's all about alignment, to be very honest. It's not like, black or white that way, that the milestones are good or bad, because I think we also understand what the founder, what the business is, what it requires, and if the founder also understands why we're coming in. So I just feel.
Do you think there's more maturity in the ecosystem amongst entrepreneurs to appreciate that fact that you do need to have milestones along the way?
I do believe that there is some sort of maturity that has come on that understanding that so one of the first things we tell founders is that if you think you don't need investor money, then don't go ahead. I mean, we're not like, and I believe, and this is true for all of us, that we don't push people to take investor money, right? Because it does come with strings attached and the fiduciary responsibility we have to our LPs, all of that, the whole cycle. So I do believe there is that maturity and that understanding.
Malvika, could I put the question to you in terms of, so you're a bootstrapped company, right? You don't have an investor riding your back. Milestoning in your business?
Of course, obviously, I think milestones are definitely very important, but I also feel that those skills, like she was just mentioning, one is that I think I look at an investor and founder relationship more as co-parenting. You're co-parenting a brand which is your child, and you both have the best interest in your heart to make it grow. And milestones, exactly, like milestones should also be mutually agreed upon, and also those milestones should be mutually achieved. in the sense, and that is something that like when your due diligence is happening, it should be both ways. You know, you take that probation period, so to say, for both the founder and the investor, where there's alignment and there's complementing skills and not like supplementing skills. So there's no, you know, this interference and this monitoring is not required only in that case. If you have that strategic complementing input from the investor in the brand. And yeah, so then I think milestone achievements just becomes like a part of the process.
Okay. Zoeb, you've been working with very early stage, even kind of pre-revenue stage, as you mentioned, startups. How can investors create environments that encourage experimentation and risk-taking without actually compromising on accountability? Because there's a lot of flaky ideas out there.
Yeah. So, see, I think we also work with different kind of founders, right? There are some who have very high tolerance for risk. Some are actually quite risk averse, right? So you have to kind of balance out, one, the attitude towards the risk, right? Sometimes you need to take more risk out there, especially in that 0 to 1, you're still figuring things out, right? We've had brands which, after scaling up to a certain level, that kind of PMF doesn't get achieved, right? So you have to again take another risk and completely change your entire business model, right? And I think as an investor, our job is, I think we hear that quite as a pattern here. They talk about co-parenting, they talk about marriage, they talk about how we have to be a real sounding board for the founders and try to guide them in that direction where they can have the comfort to take the right decision for the company. And having said that, see, balancing out accountability, I think that kind of happens when you have a sort of open relationship with your investor. I think we typically do like to or understand how the business is progressing in terms of its numbers, and see, a lot of experiments fail, right? As long as founders are keeping a couple of things in mind. One is that there is a long-term benefit to this experiment that they're taking, and secondly, that the experiment they're doing, they do it in a very lean manner, right? And that shouldn't really change with more funding, right? I think we see that throwing money at a certain problem on an experiment is kind of an easy thing to do. The hard bit is kind of building the right MVP or kind of taking the, doing it in the most lean manner, right? Or for example, say you do a complete rebranding exercise, right? I think at that time, you have to kind of see the different aspects that are there and yet be sure that long-term, if it works out, then it's going to be completely fine. But just again, like I said, you can't really throw money at it. I think that's something we don't encourage at all.
Is that because of the stage at which you're getting?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, our first check is not even $1 million. So even founders understand they can't really have that attitude, and they also work in a very lean manner, right? And I think that's great. Like, I think even some of the questions you asked earlier to the audience in terms of creative freedom and things like that, I think constraints is an essential part of creativity, and I think also risk-taking. I think it's very important to think of that, keep that in mind.
That's great. A question to the founders here collectively. A lot of you are startups which are bootstrapped. Most of you are startups which are bootstrapped at some point of time, even if you've raised money. Some of you have investors come on board who are angels, friends and family as well, but friends and family are kind of soft on the business because they are friends and family after all, and fools sometimes. But apart from that, the moment you take on an angel, that's a commitment that you're giving to an external party who's putting in money into your business. How much did you vet for the chemistry that would be there between the two of you, or was it just the money? Anyone? Yeah.
Sure, I can take this. So at the PAN project, we did vet, and we were bootstrapped for a good 4 years of our business. And when it finally came down to choosing which investor we would partner up with, it really was about culture and about the freedom that we would have, as well as the collaborative conversations that we would continue to have till the next round and for the future of the business and for the future of the brand. So I think that choosing who you want to work with, choosing whose money you want to take, and choosing the partner to work with is vital in being able to go to the next journey, as well as like be able to like fulfill your vision as a founder as well. Because at the end of the day, the person who's investing in you is buying into your vision, and so they trust you to be able to do what you do best.
Yashish, you had a perspective.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Udit is saying. So money is important, right? Generally, you are, talking to investors to raise money, but we've had instances, where we haven't pursued investors or angels, where we've thought, this will not make a comfortable relationship, or we may not be comfortable with the way they will want to operate things. So while yes, investment is important, but I think the right kind of investment and the right kind of partner, I think, are more critical.
Vani and Radhika, I'd like to ask both of you this question. You looked at probably raising money at some point of time and have raised, you're not, but if you look at the personal chemistry, it's an integral part of this whole relationship, right? The investor is not just about money and agreements and milestones. There is a personal chemistry involved. How do you resolve issues early? What do you think? I mean, looking ahead, at some point of time, you might raise institutional investment as well. What would be your filters? What would be your orange or red flags?
So we raised a seed round, and that we closed in 3 months flat. We did that with a family office and an angel. We did that because at that time we were looking for a match. A lot of marriage analogy has been given here. And we were actually looking for a match, somebody who aligned with us on our vision, who was okay, we are grounded Desi people, who was okay with the way we do business, how we say everything honestly. Second time around, we tried for 6 months. We were not able to close. We tried VC, and obviously there were some questions, some solves that we hadn't found till then, which we took time to solve.
How many suitors did you reject?
No, we were rejected 25 times, I'll be honest, and 3 of them are actually here, no 2. So, yeah, we faced rejections. There were certain solves we hadn't found, but I think the biggest reason why we took a pause also was because the second time around, we stopped looking for a match. We were trying to say the things that people wanted to hear, and that was the pressure. And we kept doing that, and then we realized that that is where the problem is, because at the end of the day, if the relationship has to work, the fundamentals have to align, and we have to be honest to ourselves. We have to be authentic. We are honest, we'll say it like it is. We messed up, we will say we messed up, this is the problem. And on top of that, we would also need somebody who believes in the category. A category has not been done before as a demographic. We are doing under 25 as a demographic on its own, so somebody has to believe in our category, align with our vision. If that is happening, that's when we do it. That's when we actually find the match. So I think we've taken a pause. We'll go back suitor hunting once we are ready.
Good point, Radhika.
I just want to add one thing that, we've spoken to investors, some have shown interest, but I always try and I always ask the hard questions first, because it's always nice when things are going hunky-dory and, you're hitting one milestone after another. But it's very important to be aligned in terms of vision, what happens when things don't go right. And I think that's the time when I thought that perhaps debt might work better for me, because, at the same time, I have a responsibility towards my own business and my own vision, and I'm unwilling to compromise it just for money. And money can be raised through other sources as well. So I think an honest communication and having that two-way channel really, really helps in identifying the right partner.
Okay. I'm going to segue to the next and the last section, because we're also running short of time. And I'd just like to urge anybody who's not had the chance to speak to kind of step up and speak the next time round. But here's a poll for all of you first. Preserving company culture while onboarding new investors is crucial to maintaining organizational integrity. That's one. The other side is investor expectations can be a significant positive influence on the evolution of a company culture. Now, I know you guys will say both are right. No, choose one. Choose one. So the first one is company culture comes before choosing investors, and the second one is investors add value to culture. Choose one side. First one, raise hands. First one, raise hands. Okay, so that's about 50%. Okay, all right, let's have the poll up on the screen, please. The fourth question. Wow. Wow, okay. So, the audience, I mean, I'm sure it's full of founders and they are saying, boss, my culture is the most important thing. Take your money and leave the sight of my doorway if you don't fit into the culture. But no, let's take that on board. And Malvika, you have something to contribute on that?
Yeah, so I think it's very rightly said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so, I mean, it says it itself that culture is the most important thing. And yes, of course, I mean, there's a middle ground. The investor does add some flavor to that culture, but it's most important that you preserve your company values and your culture at the cost of anything, over anything, whether it's strategy, money, any kind of intervention into the company should come
I can see a lot of founders nodding their head, but the investors are looking like, what are you talking about anyway? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think definitely culture over anything else.
Okay. Perspective from, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'd like to add a point, like being bootstrapped and we've been in the market for a while now. So I think being an older startup that we've been around for almost 10 years, I think I agree with the second point where getting culture from the investors point would make a bigger difference, because having value system, something in place is important that you need to hold on to, but there'll be a lot of changes, a lot of freshness that needs to come along. And I think investors push from that angle would add a lot of value, especially for a company like ours, which has been bootstrapped for almost 10 years, but needs that freshness, needs that impetus from investors' perspective to take us to the next level. So,
but I feel that that would be more strategic. I mean, what investors can bring more to the table should be or would be probably more helpful for the founder if it's strategy. And culture is something which I personally feel is something that the founder should preserve. And that's something where you should be, I mean, the veto power with the culture should be with the founder.
Absolutely. I think you hold on to some things that you really treasure and really think that, that holds everything together, but then maybe a fresher perspective, a new angle would actually add more sort of variance.
What I believe, there is a difference between culture and corporate governance. I think structure should be made because nobody is there for eternal. Founders become toxic after a period of time. That's what I also believe, because if they are not evolving, they are suicidal for themselves and for their businesses. But vision is important. If the vision is not set, definitely it will deviate. But people should also know when they need to step down.
I think that's a good point, and I'd just like to kind of put that as a question or a point across to the investor side. Any views on toxic founders? Any relationships that you want to talk about? No names basis?
I'll
or
just
otherwise?
add like 2 cents to the thing. I think again, it's all about balance. We believe that founders should, I mean, culture comes from founders, always, right? I mean, they should preserve it if everything is going well. But yes, because you're talking about toxic founders, I think there are instances when some founders can be very arrogant and very rigid. Over a period of time, we've also seen that at the early stages, founders listen to investors a lot, but after a while, they stop listening, right? Sometimes they stop responding, and we've seen those changes, right? I think in those situations, it's investors' responsibility to again be the guiding party there. But honestly, no one can force anyone to change, right? I mean, culture, even if the founders want certain changes in the culture, it can only happen if it's willing from both the parties. It cannot be one-sided, so yeah.
But in the recent past, we've had some fairly high-profile downfalls where founders have...
Yeah, I mean, the founders refuse to adopt good practices, and then it definitely has an impact, right? And it harms both the parties, investors and founders. So.
Sure. And the overall company and the brand as well. Okay, I think we've kind of covered a lot of ground. I will open the floor to any questions. Please raise your hands, first of all, if there are questions. Okay, there are a couple of questions in the back, but before we get to that, anybody would like to kind of quick 30-second takeaway. If people forget everything else, this is the thing they need to remember. Anyone?
I think can you hear me? Yeah, I think this conversation is really vital because we're talking about how investors and founders form a relationship between, and at the end of the day, it's really about your community that you're building out there and the relationship that you're building across your organization as well. So I think that while markets may be up and down as they have been over the past 2 years, having that longevity to really know that you're getting into bed or into a relationship with an investor who believes in your company, your culture, and the product that you're creating as well is the key. It's a win-win situation in that case.
So take the phrase win-win away if you take nothing else away. Anybody else want to add something to it, please?
I mean, at the end, I mean, you spend time picking your life partner. I mean, seriously, spend time picking your investor as well. It's a marriage at the end of the day.
Okay. Any of you? Great. So, yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
लगता है मेरे पास हर चीज़ के लिए कुछ ना कुछ पॉइंट है बट ऑल आई वांट टू से कि एक है ना बहुत ही डिस्पेरेंसी है कि इन्वेस्टर ऊपर हैं जिनमें इन्वेस्ट किया जा रहा है वो नीचे हैं मतलब अग्री और डिसअग्री एक बहुत माहौल ऐसा बना हुआ है मुझे लगता है कि टाइम की वैल्यू होनी चाहिए अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम आई हैव सीन दैट पीपल डू नॉट वैल्यू टाइम एंड उसके अंदर है कि आपने कोई भी बात करी है उसके ऊपर जवाब नहीं आ रहा सेइंग नो इज़ मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट देन सेइंग नथिंग एट ऑल तो वो लिम्बो के अंदर जो चीज़ें जाती है उसमें मुझे लगता है कि इन्वेस्टर्स और फाउंडर्स दोनों के लिए चीज़ें ख़राब होती हैं तो एक बार उसका जवाब देना बहुत ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है तो वो जवाब देने की हैबिट थोड़ी डेवलप करनी चाहिए इट सेव्स अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग क्योंकि टाइम फाउंडर्स के लिए सबसे प्रीशियस है
I hope nobody on the panel has been keeping you hanging for a long time. But yeah, absolutely valid point. I think it's better to hear a no quickly rather than not to hear anything at all. So yeah, fantastic array of responses here, thoughts, ideas, questions from the audience. There's one hand at the back first, and then I'll come back to you. Please, can we have a mic there? Please introduce yourself, name, company, and then address the question, if possible, to one person. But if it's general...
Actually, it's a general question, so anyone can answer. Hi, my name is Vibhor Alabadi, and I represent a company called Pincode Cosmetics Private Limited. We are into skincare analysis, and that comes from the artificial intelligence. And we have some of our clients like Urban Company and all. One thing I want to ask all of you, like we have seen there is a company like housing.com. So initially they had a domain name housing.co.in. At that point of time, they raised around $2.5 million, out of which $1 million was spent on taking the domain name housing.com. So I want to ask you, so was it right on the part of Aditya Sharma to take that call? So founders se bhi yahi question hai and investors se bhi.
It's a very specific question about a particular company, but I think it's about an ethos. What do you spend the money on?
Absolutely.
Okay, so anyone? Investors first, maybe? Anyone?
No, I think if you've taken the money, someone has given the money for that, obviously you're responsible to actually deliver on what you're planning to do. If you ask me in the context of what they were trying to do, what is relevant or not, it was not relevant, but again, that's where it also is, something which we have a responsibility to kind of look at and say where the money is being spent and like we were talking earlier also, what are the guardrails that have been put in place.
Okay. You've got the mic already, so.
I have the next question.
Okay, go ahead.
So I help a family business based out of Mauritius run a retail business in India. I just wanted to know, as a founder and as an investor both, what is the good mix of debt capital and equity capital in terms of running a company? I know most of you are bootstrapped, but still. What's the good mix of debt capital and equity capital? Like what will be a good balance between them from founders and from investors both?
How much do you want to dilute equity versus taking on the burden of a loan and paying interest on it, and that becomes a steady cost for a period of time? What's the balance? I doubt there's a correct answer. I don't think there's a Goldilocks.
There's not a template for this. Sure. I think it's all about the vision. How big, how fast you want to grow. You want to go slow, debt is a good option. You want to grow fast, you want to grow, multiply number of X, then equity is the option. But I think there is not right template to it. You cannot fit every company into a right template and see what is debt and debt to equity ratios. You can't do that. I think that is what I think.
मुझे लगता है दोनों का पर्पस अलग है. अगर आपको डेट रेज करना है तो डेट इज मोर टुवर्ड्स द वर्किंग कैपिटल, मतलब जिसका रिटर्न आपको जल्दी मिल जाए. 18-19% के अंदर आपको मार्केट में डेट मिल रहा है. अगर आपको 1 महीने 2 महीने में उसका टर्न अराउंड हो सकता है तो व्हाई नॉट टेक दैट. और अगर आपको इक्विटी डाइल्यूट करनी है तो कुछ बिल्ड करने के लिए लेनी चाहिए, जिसको टेक्नोलॉजी के अंदर आपको डालना है, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में डालना है. दैट मेक मोर सेंस.
As I said already, अभी थोड़ी देर पहले कि take the money if you're creating a new category. तो Nitin bhai just said the same thing. What we're trying to explain is that if you know the maths, if you know that itne utha ke itna percent will give the interest and everything, and then also you can make a profit, go for it. But if you know that something will pay off after, let's say, 2 years or maybe 3 years, then I think you guys should go for the equity wala thing, because the bank wale ghar aa jayenge.
Like everyone already said, there is no right balance. But I would say it also depends on the nature of business you are in. It also depends on the predictability of the nature of the business you are in. Equity at the end of the day is very expensive. You are losing away the part of your company. You're giving an ownership, you're giving AVM rights to somebody else when you're raising equity capital. But when you are in a business model wherein you have little predictability, or you're in at an early stage of your business wherein you are not able to raise debt capital, equity becomes critical. It is also dependent on the milestones you have set for yourself in terms of profitability versus growth. And there could be situations wherein you may need to raise equity because debt cap, if you have a burning P&L and free cash flow, you'll not have the money to pay back the interest on the debt. So the good part of businesses that brands are building, there is a predictability on, if you're building a business wherein you have consumers who love your product, there is a certain bit of predictability in terms of your cash flow. And you don't have to, at the same time, dilute so much, because there are instruments available which can cover for, in a lot of cases, CAPEX, in a lot of cases, working capital, in a lot of cases, your marketing capital as well. So you should, if there is an instrument available, you should utilize it mindfully.
Great. Last question. Yeah. I'm sorry, we ran out of time, but yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ninad. I have a question mainly to the investors. When you look at pitches that come to you, I would be assuming there would be two kinds of pitches. One pitch is an idea. So an Uber or Airbnb is an idea. When a person makes that pitch to you, he may not necessarily be passionate about that cause, but he has an idea, right? And people get swept by that idea and they decide to invest in that. The other kind of pitch would be an opportunity where someone says, okay, I'm going to do, let's say, vegan cosmetics, or beauty is a trend and more people are getting into beauty. So I'm passionate about beauty products and I like to indulge in that. Between these two pitches, when you guys talk amongst yourself and all the conversations that happen in the investor circle, what tends to get more traction? What tends to move you guys more?
I think, I mean, there are buyers for both. I mean, there's no set rule. It depends on the investor type. Somebody would be willing to go for a disruptive idea, but somebody would be willing to go for something which could become big in general also, right? And I think ideas are, of course, end of the day, thoughts, right? And most of the companies which you've stated, right, they started with a very different idea, and what they are now are very different things. So I think more than that, the founders really make a difference, right? What kind of founder is trying to solve for it is more important. And at the same time, what is a GTM and all of the other things which follow typically in an investment, we would like to look at that. There's no set rule in terms of what will do well, what will not do well. It all depends on different dynamics of the investment opportunity.
No, I think what the question that you essentially asked is, what do you look for in a founder market fit, right? And to Ashish's point as well, right? No idea is big or small. No idea is right or wrong. I think for us and again, you know, I said this earlier in the conversation as well, we're in the business of making money. So for us, you know, how well can you run and how deep and fast can you run with an idea? I think that's very critical, and that's one of the things that most of us here kind of screen for. So essentially just how well suited you are to kind of take that idea and build it into a reality. I think that's what one would screen for, as opposed to it being as black and white as, you know, one would hope it to be.
Great, thank you so much. I'll just do a quick sum up of what I remember, and if anybody feels like adding on one last comment, that one last thing, please do so. Investor-founder relationship is something which has to be built on mutual trust. So before you marry, please date many people, as many as you can. Filter through your cultural filter, through your mental filter, and figure out that you're going to be living with this relationship for a few years. And also, possibly if you're very successful, more investors will pile on to the whole pie, and therefore you'll need to make sure that you're picking the right people for that journey. That journey is not going to last forever together. The investors will go out. Prepare for that. They're not going to stay married to you forever. And that's something which is going to be driven by their goals, and therefore those milestones are important. Very, very important. I think everybody kind of looked at that as a very key way to make sure that the business is moving along the right path. And at the same time, founders have to evolve as well. As the business evolves, that relationship has to mature not only between the investor and the investee, but also the founder has to evolve as an individual so that the business is following the path which is of mutual benefit rather than just single-minded goals of the founder. I think there's a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge here. There's not enough time. It wouldn't have been enough time the whole day. But thank you so much, all of you on the panel, for sharing your views, your thoughts, your experiences. Thank you to the audience for being an absolutely fantastic participative audience. I think your polls really added a different perspective in some cases from what the panel was thinking in terms of their thought process. And a big round of applause to everyone in this room, founders, investors, and everybody here who's gathered. Thank you so much.